Hi everyone, I'm Anne from Herrick District Library, and today in this video I'm going to show you how to make your paper spinners from the SciArt Take and Make kit. Ready to get started? Okay, paper spinners, here we go. Now you can obviously use the printed sheet if you would like, or you can design your own circles and designs. Can come up with some really interesting sort of optical illusions if you think about what happens when you're looking at images when they spin. I'm actually just going to use a plain white one because I want you guys to use your own imaginations to come up with some amazing, awesome designs. So the first thing we want to do is cut out our two circles. And I cut the paper in half just because I find it easier to cut each circle out that way. Circle number 2. There we go. So now we need to glue one of our circles onto our thin cardboard, and I suggest doing this sort of at one end so that you have room to make another spinner on the other side, on the other half if you want to. Just gonna get out the glue stick and glue this circle right onto the cardboard. Kind of smooth it out a little bit, get out any bubbles or bumps. Doesn't need to be perfect. There we go. Now we need to cut out the cardboard, so we're just going to use the circle that we glued on here as our guide and just cut out around the edge of the paper circle to cut out our cardboard. Ta-da! Now we need to glue our other circle onto the other side of the cardboard. There. Now, I know you'll see that those two little dots in the middle there, those just, you don't have to match those up from one side to the other. They're just a guide for when you're ready to poke your holes to make your holes for your yarn to go through. So it doesn't matter if they line up. Don't fret about that. Just get your circle glued onto the back of the cardboard there. Nice and smooth. And now we are ready to make our holes. So you need something sharp. If you're not comfortable using something like this, make sure you ask a grown-up. One thing I learned is that the bamboo skewer that's in your kit is not really hard enough to make the start of your holes. It's great for making them wider so your yarn will fit through, but to make your start of your hole, you're gonna want something like a pin or a thumbtack. I used a safety pin. Just kind of bent it open a little bit. And again, very carefully, please make sure you don't stick yourself with the pin because that doesn't feel good. Poke right through. And then on the other circle, the other tiny circle, poke through on that one again. And our circles, our holes for our yarn don't need to be absolutely perfect, but try and kind of stick within those tiny little circles, because it helps to balance the spinner and it'll spin more smoothly if they're pretty close to the middle. So you're going to use your skewer to just widen that hole out a little bit so that your yarn will go through easily. And they're kind of the perfect size, actually. They almost match the size of those tiny little circles perfectly. Just put that all the way through and then do it with the other circle, the other little hole. Alrighty. And then we're going to put our yarn through. And the yarn here, the yarn that came in the kit, is kind of cool because it has sort of like shoelace tips, which make it really easy to thread through these little holes. But you can use any yarn or string you have around the house. It just might be a little bit harder to get it through the holes. Here's 1. And 2. And then you want to take your ends and tie them together in a nice tight knot. And our spinner is ready to be spun. We'll get to that in just a second. Okay, So if you've got your spinner already, whether you designed your own or used the colored printed one with the rings of color on the outside, we're gonna work them the same way. This can take a little practice, so if you get frustrated, maybe step away for a minute and come back. Took me a little while to get the rhythm down. What you want to do is you want to hold your spinner. I usually hold it with my fingers on the loops, and you want to start twisting the yarn up to wind it up, basically, to store that potential energy, which will turn into kinetic energy when we start spinning it. So I'm just like twirling. You can twirl it forward or backward. It doesn't matter. You just keep twirling it the same direction so that it winds that yarn up nice and tight. And when it's nice and tight, you can then gently pull your hands apart from each other and let that string loose. Tighten it first by pulling, and then let it loosen again so that it can wind up. It basically winds up automatically once that motion gets going. And if you've drawn a design on your spinner, it's really interesting to see what that does. I actually made one years ago that has, I brought it along, that has dots around the outside. And when it spins, the way our brain sees that motion is that it looks more like lines than dots because of the speed of the motion and how our brain and our eyes see that. So, oops. This is why I use a different design now. There we go, now it's going a little bit. You can see how those dots blur together to make, looks like little rings around the outside of the spinner. Anyway, I think this is a really fun project. I think it's another one that you can do with pretty much anything you have around the house, so you can make endless spinners as long as you've got string and paper and a little bit of thin cardboard to give it a little bit of weight. I hope you had fun. Thanks.